Hello everyone. So when I told you they don't teach logic in schools anymore, you might have been wondering, so what? What is logic anyway, and why should I care? Well, remember when we talked about John 1:1, and it says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God"? Well, that word used for word, if you remember, is logos. In the beginning was the logos. Sound familiar? That happens to be where we get the word logic from. So logos can mean both word and reason, which makes sense because logic is something we do with words, and it's the art of providing reasons for what we believe. So another way of looking at it is logic is the art of thinking and arguing well, or to put it another way, logic is the art of figuring out what the truth is and then convincing people that you're right. And I used to teach logic with something called syllogisms. If you haven't looked up syllogisms, or if you haven't ever heard of them before, then I recommend looking them up. They're really cool. But I found that students had a bit of a hard time wrapping their brains around them, so I came across this guide to writing by Kate L. Turabian that explains logic in a really, really helpful way that I think is easier to understand than syllogisms. So, according to Turabian, the three pieces of any logical argument are claims, reasons, and evidence. And if you remember, arguments doesn't mean a verbal fist fight, a shouting match. It just means providing reasons for what you believe, which is something that you need to do in every paper you write. It's also something you need to do anytime you are trying to convince your boss or your mom or your friends of something. Generally, if you don't actually provide reasons for what you believe, you're not going to be very convincing. So it's a really important skill. And if you don't have any reasons for what you believe, then how do you really know it's true? So here's how you can think well and figure out what's true and argue for it convincingly. So a claim, every argument will have at least one claim, and your main claim is going to be your thesis or your central essay. That's what you're trying to prove. And then your reasons are going to be the ideas you give that support your claim, and your evidence is going to be sort of the specific details you give that support your reasons. So evidence supports your reasons, reasons support your claim. So one of my former prison college students came up with a great example for this. Claim: the Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl next year. Reason: Dak Prescott is the best quarterback in the NFL. Evidence: here's his passing record compared to the other passing records of the other quarterbacks out there. Now realize that might be super controversial, and this is all just hypothetical. I'm not saying that Dak Prescott actually is the best or the Cowboys are the best. But that's an illustration for the kind of thing you're doing. Or maybe another illustration would be: claim: all human beings have value. Reason: human beings are made in the image of God. Evidence: quote the Bible verse in Genesis 1 where it talks about humans being made in the image of God. Right? So your reasons are how you know the claim is true, and your evidence is how you know the reasons are true. If you have good reasons but bad evidence, your argument doesn't work. If you have good evidence but bad reasons, your argument doesn't work. And reasons are generally going to be something more abstract, and evidence is going to be something more concrete. So the more abstract something is, the more of an idea it is, and the less it is something that you can see, smell, taste, touch, or hear. It's sort of something you can't really put your fingers around, like love. You can see, taste, touch, or smell a hug, but you can't actually see or touch love, right? Or justice, or any of those. Those are all abstract ideas, and reasons are going to generally be something more abstract. But evidence will be more concrete, and something concrete is something you can see, smell, taste, hear, or touch. Like the verse in Genesis, right? Somebody can flip to Genesis 1 in their Bible and see that verse. It's there physically on paper. They can check out the evidence for themselves. Or Dak Prescott's passing record. If you just say, oh, Dak Prescott is the best passer in the NFL, that's a very abstract claim. That's an idea, but the evidence, how you know that's true, is his specific passing records. You give the specific numbers. That's getting more concrete. If you give the specific numbers of completed passes, because those are all based on real physical events that happened, where the ball was launched from Dak Prescott's hands and was caught by someone else. So you want to build up from concrete things to abstract things, and use that to prove your claim. So let me give you some more specific examples of how you might do this in a paper. So I cared a lot about homelessness, so I decided to come up with some examples based on homelessness. So here's a they say that I could respond to. Homeless people just need to get a job. I don't know if you've ever heard this or thought this before, but a lot of people say this. Oh, that homeless people are just homeless because they're lazy. All they need to do is get a job and they'd be fine. Well, here's my I say in response to that. It's almost impossible for homeless people to get a job without getting housing first. So that's my claim. Now I got to provide reasons for it. So reason number 1, any official job requires an address. It's kind of hard to get as a homeless person, right? So how can you get a job without an address? How can you get a job when you're homeless, right? Then number 2, without a home, people have a difficult time showering, maintaining clean clothes, maintaining an active phone, getting a good night's sleep, and doing other basic things that are important for landing and keeping a job. Basically, if you show up to your job interview in dirty clothes, you haven't showered for 4 days, you only slept 4 hours the night before, and you don't even have a phone number to give your boss, how easy is it going to be for you to get that job? And then homeless people, reason number 3, homeless people frequently lose possessions, including their ID, to theft. An ID is required to get a job. I don't know if you knew this, but in Texas, to get an official job, you legally have to show your employer either your Texas driver's license or your Texas ID. If you don't do that, it's illegal for them to hire you unless they're doing something sort of secret and under the table, which could be kind of sketchy. And generally, under the table jobs are pretty inconsistent and might not pay well. It's easy for your boss to exploit you because there isn't a paper trail, stuff like that. So if a homeless person wants to get a, quote, real job, they need an ID, but a lot of them don't have one. And then number 4, homeless people face automatic prejudice from many employers. I think that's pretty basic. Now, how do I know all this? These are the reasons, but what's my evidence? Well, for reason number 1, an official job requires an address, I could cite official government instructions for employers. Like go to one of the websites of the federal government and quote or cite the document that says employers need to put an employee address on their I-9 forms that they're required to submit for taxes. Something like that. Now, that might be common knowledge enough that I don't really need to cite it. Like, that might be something my audience already knows, and I don't need to prove it to them. So I could just say it, and they know what's what. I mean, if you work a job, like if you've worked an official job, you probably do know this already, that you need an address. You just may not have thought of it in connection with homeless people. Then reason number 2, I could give specific details about why homeless people have a difficult time doing each of those things, with the showering, the clothes, the phone, sleep, etc. For example, what does it actually take, specifically, concretely, for a homeless person to shower or wash their clothes? And I could even get really specific, and I could cite information about truck stop locations and prices. Truck stops are one of the only places where you can get a public shower without having a house or an apartment, and I think generally it costs $10 or $12 for a shower. I could cite laundromat prices. I could even go more specific and look at, okay, how many pairs of clothes do homeless people usually have? How many times would they have to wash their clothes a week if they want to always be wearing a set of clean clothes? I could go a lot into this. or maybe I don't want to go that much into it. But these are different kinds of evidence I could give. Then, why can't homeless people sleep? Well, some of that might be kind of obvious, but it might not be obvious to all my readers. So I could just appeal to everyone's common knowledge of traffic noise. Like, if you've lived in Houston, you know just how loud traffic can be. And if you're trying to sleep under a freeway bridge with cars rumbling overhead constantly, cars whizzing past you under the freeway, cars honking, all of that, probably would not be that easy to sleep. And that's all getting more concrete, like specific details, the cars rumbling on the overpass, the honking, stuff like that. Or I could also tell stories from homeless people about being honked at, shot at, or beaten up in the middle of the night. And I have heard stories from homeless people about all of these things. So then I could also, let's see, for reason 3 about the IDs, I could tell stories from homeless people about losing their IDs. I could also cite web pages from nonprofits serving the homeless, because some nonprofits that serve the homeless have realized this is a big problem a lot of homeless people face. And so some of them try to provide some kind of ID service to help homeless people get their IDs back because it's really, really complicated. So I could bring that up as evidence that this is a challenge they face. And then reason number 4 about the automatic prejudice from employers. I could tell stories from homeless people about being turned down for jobs. And I could also, as evidence, I could just appeal to the reader's own reactions when they see homeless people. I think most of my audience, whoever they are, has probably seen a homeless person before, and if we're honest with ourselves, how do we feel when we see a homeless person? I think a lot of us feel this gut reaction of fear or disgust, like, oh, that's a scary person, I hope they don't come close to me, or, oh, they're dirty, or things like that, right? If that's your reaction when you see a homeless person, what do you think an employer's reaction is going to be? And I could maybe find some kind of statistics about this too. Now, let's say I want to argue a different point. So I just used all those reasons and evidence to argue it's almost impossible for homeless people to get a job without getting housing first. But let's say I want to make something like that into a they say. Now, my they say is to help the homeless, we need to give them housing first. My I say is housing first isn't enough. As the Austin-based nonprofit Mobile Loaves and Fishes believes, homeless people need community first. Now, if you notice, my I say does include a they say, right? What this Austin-based nonprofit thinks. This is okay because it's different from the they say I'm responding to, right? For one, and I'm using the word as to show this isn't just what this nonprofit thinks, this is what I think too. I agree with them. Now, if I'm only agreeing with them and nothing more, then I'm not actually adding anything. I'm not going anywhere. So I have to make this my own by providing different reasons for this than you would find just on the Mobile Loaves and Fishes website. I've got to provide my own reasons for this, and my own words and all that. But I wanted to give them credit in this because I think this nonprofit may have been the first to come up with that slogan, community first, and I think it's a really good slogan. So I wanted to credit them for that. But anyway, let's say I want to prove that I say community first, not housing first. That's the real solution. Well, here are some reasons. First of all, major housing first programs rarely help homeless people get jobs, break free from drug addictions, or become independent from government support. Number 2, this is because homelessness isn't just caused by external forces, it's caused by internal character problems. Number 3, our character is shaped by who we spend time with. Number 4, many homeless people lose their communities when they land on the streets. They end up either isolated or surrounded by bad influences. I'm going to get rid of that comma. It's a mistake. Then number 5, so we've got the bad influences or lack of community, either of which will shape your character, right? But then reason number 5, many homeless people who escape the streets relapse into bad habits because of bad community. So how do I prove this? Let's see what evidence we've got. So for reason number 1, I could tell stories of homeless people placed in housing first programs. I know at least one. I could cite statistics and articles about housing first programs in California, Houston, etc. And there's a lot of information about this, especially because I think San Diego and maybe Los Angeles or some of the cities in California have been putting a lot of money into housing first programs, and they just haven't been going anywhere. They haven't been that successful, and there's a lot of information about that I could quote. And there is also a housing first program going on in Houston, headed up by the HPD, and I could cite something about that too. And notice I have both. I have a story, and I also have statistics or articles. The reason to do this is because I can tell a story of something from my own personal testimony, something I've heard from somebody or I've seen as an eyewitness, and that works as evidence, but it's not necessarily going to be convincing to all of my readers, because what if I'm just making it up? Like, how do they know they can trust me? So if I just tell you, oh, I talked to this person, I talked to somebody who told me this, and I saw this happen when I was out on the streets, that's generally not enough evidence. For people to believe you, they really have to trust you. You have to have a lot of credibility. And one way you can build your credibility is by citing outside sources other than just yourself, like statistics or articles, or giving the name of a specific source, like even a specific person that they could go and talk to. This is why journalists are generally supposed to give the names of the people they talk to, because otherwise, how do you know that the journalists aren't just making it up? So it's good to do both. If you can tell things from your own personal experience or your own personal testimony, but it really helps to back it up with outside sources as well. And that could also just be appealing to sort of common experience that almost anybody knows, like the traffic, like the common knowledge of traffic noise or things like that. And that's something everyone can see for themselves easily. Anyway, for reason 2, the internal character problems, I could tell stories about addicted, complacent, or irresponsible homeless people I know. I could tell the story of a homeless man who I was trying to help get off the streets, and I basically went through every step that I needed to take to get him to the point where he just had to say, yes, I'm doing this, and he could get his ID, work toward getting a job, and I wanted to try help him get off the streets. I was committed to helping him, and like all he had to do is just say, yes, I'm going to take the next step. And he had told me, yeah, I want to get a job, I want to get off the streets. And then when I got him to that point, he just told me, well, I realized I don't really want to leave. I like it out here. I'm just doing me. And so he preferred, even though he had a choice, he preferred to stay out on the streets, taking advantage from other people by begging for money, rather than actually get a job and try help other people through that. And so that's a story I could tell as evidence. I could also cite statistics about drug addiction among homeless people. It is pretty high. There's many more kinds of evidence I could use here. Then etc., so on. Like, for example, for the last one, many homeless people who escape the streets relapse into bad habits because of bad community. I could tell the story of one homeless guy I knew who was addicted, got into rehab, and then got clean, got into housing, and he ended up being roommates with a drug addict. Well, imagine how that went. You're a former addict, you're with the substance all the time, you're with somebody who does it. If you're hanging around with those kinds of people, you don't have a lot of hope of staying clean. Community is really powerful, and a lot of homeless people just don't have good community, and a lot of them actually have bad community. So these are all kinds of pieces of evidence I could give for these reasons. If I just gave these reasons, it would be really abstract, and it wouldn't hit as well for the readers, and they might not think I was as trustworthy, because, okay, how do you know many homeless people relapse into bad habits? What if that's just a generalization? Stuff like that. So one more example, because I know so far the examples I've been using are how-to examples, like how to help the homeless, basically. how homeless people can get jobs, things like that. And for those kinds of questions, uh, often you do need to cite some kind of statistics or something like that. Not always, but often. But there's another kind of writing that you can do, and a lot of you might end up doing it. Now this is something like maybe if you wanted to write about the effects of technology and social media on people, that would just be looking at, okay, how do these things actually affect people? You'd have to cite examples and statistics, things like that, to show. But let's say you want to write about a moral question instead. A moral question doesn't ask, how does this work? How do we do this? A moral question asks, should we do this? What's the right thing to do? So I could do a moral question about homelessness instead of asking how should we help the homeless. Maybe ask why should we help the homeless. So here's my they say. We shouldn't waste our time helping panhandlers because many will spend the money on drugs or alcohol and many aren't even homeless. I don't know if you know what I mean by panhandlers, but that's sort of just a general term for anyone who goes out on the street corners and begs for money. And in reality, some of them are homeless, and some of them are pretending to be homeless. And some of them aren't even pretending to be homeless, but they just aren't. And also, in reality, a lot of them will spend the money on drugs or alcohol. So, because of this, some people say, we shouldn't waste our time on them. Just keep driving. Ignore them. But, and notice, this is a shouldn't, so this is a moral question, right? But I think, no. I say, even if all panhandlers were deceptive and immoral, it would still be right to help them, although the most important help they need is not financial. So basically, like worst case scenario, even if, let's say, all panhandlers were pretending to be homeless and were drug addicts, it would still be right, the moral part, to help them, although not necessarily in financial ways. So let me back that up with some reasons. Jesus came to help immoral people and spend a lot of time with them. I mean, if you're a non-Christian, this isn't going to be super convincing to you, but if you're a Christian, you should pause and think, oh yeah, Jesus didn't just help moral people. He said he came to help immoral people. So maybe even if panhandlers are immoral, I should help them too. Another reason, here's one that might be more convincing to a non-Christian. We can help panhandlers without giving them money. Their real problems may be lack of relationships or lack of character, and those are things we could try to help them with without enabling their habits. Number 3, all of us are immoral, right? So if all of us are immoral, here's sort of 2 sub-points, sub-arguments. Well, then, if we are grateful for the people who have been our friends anyway, even though we are immoral, then we should do the same for others. Cautiously, of course. You gotta be careful about letting immoral people influence you to do immoral things, but the fact is, we are all immoral. So, if other people have been our friends anyway, maybe we should be willing to be friends, or at least friendly to other immoral people anyway. And if we are grateful for others who have kindly helped us to see our own flaws and change, then we should do the same for others. So just sort of like a common sort of sense of justice or fairness argument. And then number 4, all people, regardless of their character, have value as humans. And subpoints, well, A, if this wasn't true, we would all lack value. So that's sort of a reason for the reason. Going back to this, like, okay, hold on. If it wasn't true that people have value regardless of whether they're immoral or not, then we would all lack value because all of us are immoral. So this is building on that reason. And if there's a line, somebody might say, well, oh, like, those people are evil, I'm just not perfect. Well, really? Like, if there's a line between someone who's not perfect and someone who's evil, where do we draw the line? How bad is too bad? And how do we know that panhandlers are on the evil side and we're not? Most of us, if we're really honest with ourselves, I think have some pretty serious flaws. But we need some evidence for all of this, so let's take a look. So if you're making a moral argument, generally statistics are not that helpful. The kind of evidence you generally need are A, one of the really helpful things, if you're a Christian, is the Bible. One of the really helpful things, whether you're a Christian or not, is sort of appealing to people's common experience, the kinds of things that everybody knows or everybody experiences. C.S. Lewis is a master of this in his book Mere Christianity and in his Screwtape Letters. We'll get to read the Screwtape Letters later. But here's some examples of kinds of evidence. So, for reason number one, Jesus came to help immoral people. I could quote Bible verses about Jesus hanging out with tax collectors and prostitutes. There's plenty of those. Reason number two, we can help panhandlers without giving them money, and especially their real problems might be lack of character. Well, that's obvious, right? If they're lying to people, the concrete thing, then they lack character. It's pretty obvious. Or lack of relationships. Concrete evidence could be something, well, like how many times do we actually see people talking to panhandlers, or stories about panhandlers lacking relationships. And then for reason three, we're all immoral. Some people don't really like to think of themselves as immoral, so this is where you could kind of dig in, like give examples of immoral things that most people have done, specific examples of like lying, cheating, stealing, money laundering, taking advantage of other people, because I think most people have taken advantage of someone else in some way. So sort of to try to show, well, okay, how different are you from the panhandler? And if the audience is honest with themselves, they should resonate. And then you could also give examples of ways a friend might kindly help us to see our flaws, sort of specific examples of something that somebody either would have had, your readers probably have either experienced for themselves or can easily imagine somebody else experiencing. And then for reason four, all people have value. So that there's this line of argument, which works for non-Christians too, I think, and you can support by appealing to evidence from reason three about us all being immoral. Or for Christians, I could also just quote Bible verses about the image of God, right? Or for God to love the world, etc. Now, if you are writing about abortion, you're going to be doing this kind of thing more. You're going to be making a moral argument, most likely. A lot of you might end up making a moral argument. So if you do that, you're probably going to need to cite less sources, but you still need evidence. But now, let me just go over some quick cautions, some warnings to watch out for, right? So, catchphrases are something that you really need to watch out for. There's a lot of popular catchphrases that float around that people like to say if they're trying to make some kind of argument about something. Like, every side, whether it's in politics or the LGBTQ debate or the transgenderism debate. I mean, that's part of the LGBTQ debate, right? But in almost any debate, there's always catchphrases that get tossed around. And a lot of people seem to think that making an argument just means dropping your favorite catchphrase and saying, boom, point proven. But that doesn't work, right? A catchphrase is not logic. And often catchphrases actually hide sloppy logic or sloppy thinking. So just dropping a catchphrase is not an excuse for giving solid reasons and evidence. So you need to go deeper. You got to ask, what does this actually mean? How do I know this? How does this prove my point, or does it? You got to ask the why questions, all the tough questions that I like to pester you with, right? These are important. So let me just go over some dangerous catchphrases to watch out for. And I picked a lot from the pro-life, pro-choice debate because I think this is one of the areas in society where we see this problem the most. People just throwing around a catchphrase and saying, like, oh, I've proven my point. And they really hide sloppy thinking. So I'll go over some of those, but first, a couple of my pet peeve catchphrases. First one is, that's his or her truth, right? Or that's your truth, or that's my truth, or whatever. Generally, people use this as sort of an excuse to not make a judgment in a moral situation, to just say, oh, like, yeah, they can kind of do whatever they want because, well, that might be their truth, that's the way things are, or that's the right thing to do. Well, look, I don't care what your truth is. What is the truth, right? Because Jews must die was Hitler's, quote, truth, but that didn't make it true. All right, there are a lot of things that people sincerely believe in and think are their truth that are dead wrong. So don't just dodge a moral question by saying, "Oh, it's kind of whatever anyone thinks, whatever your truth is." No, there's reality, and sometimes the reality is complicated, and you have to dig into it a lot, and you can find strong arguments on both sides. But it's not just as simple as, "Oh, that's your truth, that's my truth." There is a truth. A similar one is decide what's right for yourself, or you know what's best for yourself. A lot of people, I think, have been throwing this around in the Aaron Rodgers situation. Like, oh, well, if Aaron Rodgers thinks it's right for him and it works for him to use psychedelics, then good for him. He can do whatever he wants. He gets to decide what's right for himself. Well, really? Like, would you say that to a crack addict, or a pedophile, or Hitler, or Joseph Stalin, or Kim Jong-un, or a money launderer? Or there's plenty of people who I don't think we would want to say that to. There's plenty of people who think they know what's right for themselves, and they're wrong. All right? And some people don't want to say that. Some people hate the idea of saying someone else is wrong. But look, we can all just admit pedophiles are wrong. At least I really hope so. We can all admit Hitler was wrong. I really hope so. So you gotta go deeper than, oh, that person decided that for themselves, so therefore it's right for them. You gotta actually give some evidence about, okay, why is this a good choice or a bad choice? Be more specific. So now, onto the pro-choice and pro-life slogans. I tried to pick on both sides a little bit. One of the pro-lifers' favorite slogans is something like, abortion leads to regret. Well, how? Right? Always? What percentage of women regret their abortions, and how do you know? And even if many people regret it, does that mean it's wrong? Like, people regret other things too. Just because you regret something, does that mean it's wrong, and should it be illegal? Also, it is debated what percentage of women regret their abortions. Pro-choicers cite at least one study claiming that almost 0 women regret their abortions, like a really tiny percentage. And then pro-lifers cite, I can't remember where they get their claims from, but they claim that, oh, many, many women regret their abortions. So how do we know? We got to look at the evidence both sides actually give for their claims. Another one is abortion hurts women. It's another pro-life slogan. Well, again, how? People do plenty of things that hurt themselves, like smoking, drinking soda, or pulling all-nighters. I wonder if any of you have done an all-nighter. Should we make those illegal too? This is kind of a distraction from the key issue. Now, I understand some pro-lifers like to say this just to make it clear that they do care about women too, not just their babies, which I think is important. But by itself, if you just drop slogans like abortion hurts women and it leads to regret, you're not going to actually show that abortion is wrong. You need to do more than that. So now that I've picked on the pro-lifers a little bit, let me pick on the pro-choicers. Here are some common catchphrases they use. A woman's right to choose. All right, I know this is a really, really common one. But seriously? Like, sure, a woman has the right to choose a lot of things, but does she have the right to choose to shoot her sister? You need to prove that a woman has the right to choose the specific action you're thinking of, right? Because this is part of the debate. I mean, all of us know, it's common sense, there are a lot of things we have the right to choose. You have the right to choose what you want for breakfast. You have the right to choose what comes out of your mouth. You have the right to choose where you want to drive today, things like that. But I think we all know none of us have the right to choose to just randomly shoot somebody or commit robbery or money laundering or etc. Like, there are some choices we do not have the right to make. So part of the abortion debate is the question, which category does the choice of abortion fall under? Is it the category of choices that are just up to individual freedom, or is it the category of choices that we don't have the right to do because they hurt someone else? So you need to answer that question if you're going to argue for the pro-choice side. You can't just say, oh, a woman's right to choose. Same with this phrase, a woman's right to her own body. Well, is a baby or fetus part of a woman's body? Because, I mean, the fetus, if you want to call it a fetus, has different, it's in the woman's body, but is it a part of the woman's body? It has different DNA from her, a different heartbeat, it can move independently, things like that. So are you really going to say it's part of her body? And abortion is not just about the woman's body, it's about the fetus's body. So what gives a woman a right to destroy someone else's body? Now, there are pro-choice arguments that attempt to answer this. I think probably the strongest one is the violinist argument, but you have to go more deeper than just saying a woman's right to her own body. You got to actually make an argument that, okay, like this is also about the fetus's body, so how is this okay? You got to support that. Same with another one. I'm pro-life, but I would never tell a woman what to do. Like I don't believe in abortion, but I'm not going to tell someone what to do. Well, again, seriously, like, is abortion killing a human being or not? Would you tell a woman not to shoot her sister, or would you just be silent? Like, would you say, oh, well, I'm not in favor of murder, but I would never tell a serial killer not to kill their victims, right? We have to. This is sort of a way that people try to excuse themselves from actually making a decision, but the fact is, we got to answer this question: like, is abortion killing a human being or not? And if it is, then maybe it is in the category of things you should be okay with telling somebody not to do, just like you should be willing to tell a serial killer to stop. And then last, here's one of the most emotional ones: rape justifies abortion. So this is really emotionally powerful, because rape is a horrible thing, and pro-lifers often just get caught like a deer in the headlights with this, because they're like, oh man, if a woman got raped, how can I tell her not to have an abortion? How can I say abortion is wrong? But here's the deal. Why does the baby deserve to die? They didn't rape the mom. And even if rape does justify abortion, how is that relevant to the majority of abortions, which are not due to rape? Like even if it is true, so like, you, first of all, you still have to show if that rape does justify an abortion. You have to provide some reasons for that, because yes, rape is tragic and horrible, but why does one horrible thing being done to somebody allow them to do something horrible to someone else? If it is something horrible, you gotta actually figure out, is it horrible, right? And even if it is true rape justifies abortion, it's kind of a distraction from the majority of abortions, which are not due to that. So basically all of these statements here, all of these catchphrases about the pro-life, pro-choice movement, pretty much all of them are distractions from the core questions, which are A, is a fetus in the womb a living human being or not? And then B, under what circumstances, if any, is it acceptable to kill another human being, and why? Every pro-lifer or pro-choicer needs to come up with an answer to those questions and actually give reasons and evidence for their answer. And they have to go deeper than slogans like this. So just watch out for catchphrases like this if you're writing about the abortion topic, or if you're writing about another topic. There's probably a lot of catchphrases in your topic. We talked about one that might come up in the Aaron Rodgers topic. But just watch out for these. You gotta go deeper. You gotta provide more solid reasons and evidence than things like this. So anyway, just one last thing. So we've talked about claims, reasons, and evidence, how to use them. So let's put them into practice. Here is this little exercise I'm giving you. In a blank document, I want you to type 1 to 2 claims They can be some of your I says from the they say I say assignment we did, or they can be something new. Type at least 3 reasons to support each claim, and then type at least 1 piece of evidence to support each reason. Come up with all of this on your own without any help, and upload the document to the Claims, Reasons, Evidence assignment link on Blackboard by 11:59 p.m. on this coming Saturday. And that will count as your attendance for Thursday, September 15th. So basically, I just want you to get the chance to practice this. I was hoping we'd have more chance to practice claims, reasons, and evidence in class, but that didn't happen. But here's your chance to put it into practice, and this skill will help you in essay number 1 and essay number 2 and the final portfolio and all that. It's a really important skill in writing, because a lot of people think writing is just stating your opinion, but there's a lot more to it than that. You gotta actually back up your opinion. You gotta show me why I should agree with you. So, and I don't care which side of the debate you fall on, you can argue either side. I just care, can you back it up with good reasons and evidence? So, anyway, think about it and practice this, and I look forward to seeing y'all next time. God bless.